Please welcome Fernanda Ávila, Secretary of Mining of the Nation, Republic of Argentina, Iván Arriagada, Chief Executive Officer, Antofagasta Plc, Robert Friedland, Founder and Executive Co-Chairman, Ivanhoe Mines, and Bloomberg's Shery Ahn.
Thank you so much for being here. Good morning. What a time to be in Panama, right? Especially when we're seeing Latin America's stars shine brighter, given this huge demand that we're seeing for critical minerals. So we're very excited to have this panel. Thank you so much for joining us here in Panama City.
Thank you.
Robert, let me just start with you and go directly to the point about the mining industry itself. Bob Dylan, 1965, Subterranean Homesick Blues. What, and to our puzzled audience, what does this mean to you in terms of the mining industry?
First of all, that's when he invented rap music, but he had two great lines. You don't need a weatherman to know the way the wind blows. And the last comment in that song is the pump won't work because the vandals took the handle. And that's about the supply chain. The whole supply chain in the world is stressed, and we're trying to build a better world. And you need metals for that better world, very metals intensive. And one of the great places to mine those metals is here in Latin America, but it's really a global mining issue.
Are there enough of those minerals right now? And are they being pumped out fast enough?
We've seen a five-fold increase in lithium in the last year. Lithium is distributed all over the world, but it's a lot of work to develop and engineer a mine with the right ESG characteristics to do it properly. Lithium has to be a very pure chemical, as refined, so it's not so easy. And copper metal and nickel metal and other metals needed for electrification of the world economy to reduce global warming gas are going to be an enormous demand.
Ivan, what are you seeing on the ground? We know that Chile just avoided some of the most drastic changes to the new constitution when it comes to the mining industry. What does this mean in terms of the mining output and the outlook for your company and the country?
Yeah, well, I mean, in more general terms, I would say, copper is needed for the climate change and energy transition. It's a key metal from that point of view for electromobility, for renewable energy, and therefore it's key that we're able to develop and promote the production of copper, from that point of view. Now, it's I would say we're probably going into a period in which we expect there will be shortage probably of these key metals, considering all that is happening, the restrictions on supply chain, some of the permit extensions which, and requirements which have been progressing and adding, and we're very committed to responsible and sustaining mining, but it's just taking longer to get copper. So I think we're moving into a phase and a period in which there's almost a new order for critical metals, in which it's going to be hard to be able to meet the required demand going forward. There was some discussion at some stage whether, with what's happening on the geopolitical side, energy security was going to take predominance over energy transition. But I think it's just accelerating the process. It seems that, on the contrary, this is just creating added demand. So from that point of view, we're very keen on being able to produce to meet that demand. And I think there's a lot of changes taking place in Chile, in Peru, in other jurisdictions. We're very keen that those changes are made with a long-term perspective and that they achieve the right balance to be able to continue to promote investment and the development of the industry.
Secretary Ávila, how is Argentina adding to the output and perhaps helping demand here?
Yeah, well, mining is a key priority in Argentina right now. We know that the world will demand more and more minerals as we transition to cleaner energies and energy efficiency. So I think we're fostering investments from different parts of the world, and we're trying to get more exploration in Argentina. We have a tremendous amount of geological production that could be untapped. And we think that's very important to foster those exploration companies to come to Argentina. We know that we have a tremendous potential. We have 6 projects of lithium that are now under construction and 2 projects that are expanding their current operations. And in the next 5 years or so, we can multiply by 6 our current production. So that will give the world the lithium that it demands. And we also have lots of copper projects that are under advanced exploration stages. One is under construction right now. So I think Argentina is a key player in supplying the world the needs that it has into this shifting.
Elon Musk was saying recently, get into lithium mining if you want those juicy margins. Are you expecting to see that?
Yeah, I think they will give Argentina these projects that I told you before, the 6 projects under construction and those 2 that are just expanding their operations will more than multiply our current exports. So we have the current exports by $3.2 billion, and we think that it could be multiplied if we had these projects under development in a few years. But we want these projects to develop under sustainable ESG practices and framework, and that will give not only the exports, but also clear benefits to the communities that surround those projects and that needs further infrastructure and development and skills. So I think it's a multiplier effect in the economy of Argentina.
I do want to get into ESG and also really the green technology aspect of this, but Robert, when it comes to financing and when it comes to approaching these different mining projects, what are you seeing on the ground? And are you in lithium as well? I know that you're in copper and other metals.
Quietly, we're looking at lithium because I'm involved in a startup that is using lithium metal on one side of the battery. So the next generation of batteries will go from lithium ion to lithium metal. So we're going to increase the energy density of the next generation of batteries and make them safer and drive the car a lot longer range. But just to put this in perspective for your audience, humanity has mined 700 million metric tons of copper since the Babylonian days or ancient Egypt. And that's what built our modern world. That's what built these bright lights in this TV station. To maintain 3% global economic growth, we need to mine as much copper in the next 22 to 24 years as we've mined in all of human history. That's without electrification. We start talking about a new economy and the reduction of global warming gas. The mining industry has to do an enormous amount of work to find the copper metal we need for that transformation. And it's even more difficult to build those mines consciously, sustainably, with the appropriate ESG characteristics, because we can't build a better world and at the same time make a mess of the mining process. I'm very happy to say that my old friend, Andronico Luxic, and then Jean Paul, his family, they're doing an incredible job in Chile. And then I have an old friend, Lucas Landin, who has a new discovery in Argentina, Filo. And so, we just have an enormous amount of work as an industry to enable this new economy to exist.
Iván, what are you seeing on the ground to what really Robert is saying right now?
I mean, I would say in terms of discoveries, I think it's been a feature of this industry, and copper in particular, for a while, that it's difficult to find new targets and ore bodies. I mean, Robert has been a player or key player in achieving success in some of them, but it's becoming more difficult. We have a very active exploration program in the Andean region, includes Chile and Peru, and also parts of Argentina, but it's going to take a while. And once you have a discovery, it probably takes 10 to 15 years to be able to convert that into metal that can be used, and therefore the lead times are getting longer. But the industry is changing and transforming in terms of the way that it mines, also in a way that the ESG attributes are also very integral to the work that we mine. Seawater, renewable energy, all of those features are becoming part of normal mining for us.
Which is why you've also called this whole vision and dream of electrification a fraud.
Well,
it takes time to get all of those minerals that you need.
You can see that we not only have the enormous global demand for a new economy and the reduction of global warming gas, but now there's war and tension in the world economy. So as we look at the mining industry, Ivan and I cannot go mining in Russia or Ukraine or Kazakhstan. That's gone. We can't go mining where it rains too much because it creates real issues in the tailings dam or potential environmental liability. And then as metals prices rise, everybody wants a piece of the pie. And we have to employ women in mining, and we have to change the software around how the whole enterprise is done. So mining itself has to be in the process of reinventing itself. There's no point in trying to satisfy a better world and then mining in an unconscious way. So the industry has been very conservative, is recently learning how to think differently. We have to figure out where the energy comes from to even do the mining, right? And so I think Antofagasta is a leader, and I think we're leaders in trying to find a new way to mine. But we will not have a new economy without mining. And it's very important to understand we cannot get there from here. We cannot get rid of oil. We cannot get rid of coal. We cannot get rid of hydrocarbon emissions because solar and wind are 10 or even 20 times more copper intensive than the old way of generating energy. And so new energy systems need an enormous amount more copper.
And this new mindset when it comes to using green technologies in a sustainable way in order to advance the mining industry, Secretary Ávila, does Argentina in a way have a latecomer advantage because you're adopting these technologies from the get-go?
Yes, of course. We always say that the fact that Argentina started later than other countries and even our neighbors in the region has a silver lining, has a positive aspect. I think that Argentina can introduce the ESG framework from the beginning of the life of the projects, and we know that mining will be, that decarbonization is minerals intensive and mining intensive, but as a government we want to do a just transition and a sustainable transition. For that, we have to develop this ESG framework from the beginning of the project life cycle. And I think that's a great opportunity for Argentina as a late starter, as you said, also with the women in the industry that Robert was saying. I think that's something that we can start to foster and help from the beginning.
I think Argentina has one of the lowest percentages of women in the mining industry from all of the sectors in your country. What, 9% or so?
Yeah, 9%.
Yeah.
9%, and I think that's very, if you look at the indirect contracts, that number increases a little bit, but it's mainly driven by, for example, catering or some things like hotels. And you see that there's a bias there, that's something that we have to develop with the government. And so it's something that we're taking very seriously to try to get women into the mining industry and to keep women in the mining industry. I think that's a very important thing.
I do have an audience question, so if you do have any more questions, do send it from the Bloomberg New Economy app. And is for Iván, what's the timetable for the expansion project for your mines? And perhaps I would like to add, given that, of course, we're also trying to do this sustainably and conforming to ESG standards.
Yeah, we've got two major, I would say, mining districts in Chile. Pelambres is one, and we're finishing the construction of a desalination plant, which will provide the water required for the mine and also expanding the mill. And the next phase is an extension of the mine life, which we expect to initiate in 2025. So that's roughly the timing, brownfield. And then in the case of Centinela, we have the plan of expanding, building another concentrator plant. And that's, we've got the permits and we've got the engineering and we expect to take this to consideration by the board by the end of this year. So the good news is that we've got an inventory of mineral in our own districts, which allows us basically to expand at the right time to be able to meet demand. And I will, on the topic just discussed, I would also like to say that the positive news, however, about mining, and if you look at mining in Chile, is that there's been a very big transformation in the way that we mine. Mining is not the old way of extracting ore anymore. I talked about renewable energy. I mean, we're running 100% on renewable energy in our mines today. We've talked about water. It's predominantly for big mines being supplied from the sea. In terms of women participation, we are around 17, 18%. So the way that mining is confronting, the challenges of the future is really different. And I think that's a great news because the metal will be required for the energy transition.
And yet the new constitution that Chile is working on right now includes even stricter environmental standards. Does that mean that that will also increase the cost and perhaps the hurdles for more investing in the mining industry?
Look, I think the new constitutional process in Chile is still, I would say, working in progress. If you look at what's come out in this sort of initial draft with respect to mining, there are not significant changes to the sort of provisions, but there is a lot that needs to be developed later in law, so we still have to see. So it's still something that it's being worked, but certainly I would say the general trend is that from an environmental point of view, regulations and requirements are going up, and that's a feature in Chile and everywhere, and that's something that we in mining are taking up as we develop our new projects.
I do want to point the audience to a poll that we have in place right now. To benefit from the green revolution, mineral-rich countries need to attract more foreign investment, share revenue with local communities, establish strict regulations to safeguard the environment, create incentives to capture more of the value chain. So if you go into your apps, you can actually choose your answers right now. And we are seeing it's varying a little bit from 25 to 50%. We'll get you those results, but let me turn to Robert, because continuing the conversation on sustainability, I remember how you, in our conversation in the past, you were very much focused on chickens for the local community and how important it is to actually work with the people on the ground.
Mining has to reinvent its entire relationship with host communities. And that's why we want to recognize in mining there's a hardware component. The hardware is the mine. It's the copper, or the gold, or the lithium. The software is how the whole enterprise of mining relates to all the people around the mines within 25, 50 kilometers. And women are better for that. We've proven that women are better than men at putting this whole thing together. Traditionally, the mining industry only worried about the hardware aspect, making money at mining. Now we look at it as a holistic enterprise. Where we're working in Africa, we're training women, and we're building huge agricultural developments, banana plantations, chicken farming. We get the world's best chickens there. They're laying eggs. The women are selling omelets to the mines. Clothing enterprises, brick factories, educational institutions. All of this has to be part of mining now. Unfortunately, mining has had a terrible reputation historically, but everything your audience is touching, you either grew it agriculturally or you mined it. Those hand phones you got in your hand, they were mined. There's at least 80 elements in the periodic table in a modern Apple phone. So when we go back to this enterprise of mining, starting with a clean sheet, it's really important to bring women into it and to change the way the entire enterprise relates to local people. Because if the local people near the mine are unhappy, the mine's going to have a really serious problem. There's no place to hide. Every one of those phones is an NGO. Click, and you're on the cover of the New York Times. Nobody can be fooled. And so I think the mining industry is taking a much more realistic approach. Now, you've got Las Bambas in Peru. It's had a lot of problems with local communities. You see this in a lot of mines. Miners need to re-examine the enterprise from day one to try to prevent that kind of problem from occurring. And I'm sure, I think Ivan and I agree, the mining industry has made huge, unrecognized strides in how we relate to the environment and how we relate to local people.
You talked about these projects that you have in Africa. You do have some here in Latin America as well. There is more interest right now in what's happening in Africa, especially as we are seeing less friendly, perhaps, policies coming from some countries, including Chile, including Peru as well, when it comes to taxing investments. How do you stay competitive in the world when you're trying to attract all of this capital?
We warned, the Chileanos, and we warned the Peruvianos. You have competition. It's a global market, and the ore grades are much higher in Africa. There's a lot more water available, more hydroelectricity, and a very young population. If you just Google Democratic Republic of the Congo, median age. The average person is less than 19 years of age. 90 million people in that country hungry to work. So a lot of excess militant unionism and crazy demands when ore bodies have declining ore grades and have so many other problems. Governments have to be very, very careful. It's an international market. The largest producer of copper in the world used to be the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but it was surpassed by Chile when the giant porphyry coppers were invented. And Chile is the world leader. And, however, there are challenges. Peru is in second place, and then here come the Africans. So the African continent is extremely rich in mineral resources and has to be a part of this new economy and energy revolution. Now, I'm hoping that when I get a little bit older, and so does Ivan, maybe we'll merge with a Chilean-Congolese cooperation, and we'll stretch both sides.
Ivan, how do you feel about that? And we do have an audience question. Is political risk affecting new mining projects?
Yeah, so I would say that, to the extent that mining and the development of mining in Africa does bring prosperity, as we think it will, to the continent, as it has done in Chile and Peru, I think it's all welcome. I mean, obviously there is now, from that point of view, more competition, and it's even though that's happening, it's still becoming more difficult to do mining everywhere. And so, we from that point of view, we acknowledge and recognize, the other jurisdictions where mining is growing, and good for those countries and those places. I think Chile still remains, the #1 producer. It's becoming more challenging. Grades are coming down, and minings are aging, and therefore, it's more challenging. It's a different type of mining, but we still think that Chile will keep, its fair share of production in the future.
Secretary Ávila, the government in Argentina, though, has become more open to the mining industry. Is actually trying to really promote the industry right now.
Yeah, of course. As I said at the beginning, Argentina thinks that mining is one of the key industries for the development and with solving some of the Argentinian problems. I think we have been introducing different aspects of promotion in the last few years that reflected on the investments. We had investment announcement for over $10 billion in the last years. We had some companies, very big companies, coming back to Argentina, such as Rio Tinto. So we think that's a very good environment for investments. And we had a new policy to foster foreign investments in the last year that we sent to the different companies to know that there's another tool that they can use to access to foreign exchange. That's something that it's an issue in Argentina, and it's something that was thought for the mining industry. So we're trying to create a good environment for investments.
The poll results right now are in. Number C has 38% established strict regulations to safeguard the environment from mineral exploitation. And of course, it seems that the idea right now, especially when we're talking about new economy, is just the long term, right? The long-term outlook. So, Secretary Ávila, just tell us a little bit more then about some of the issues that Argentina is seeing. I know that you are also the mining minister for Catamarca. Is there anything that you have done locally that can actually apply federally, especially when it comes to these sustainability issues?
Yeah, I think one of the top priorities right now is to raise awareness in the people, maybe just let them know that minerals are necessary for shifting into cleaner energies, and also giving people the chance to talk in a more open dialogue and a more good environment for dialogue with the communities. And that's something that we're trying to do from the federal level and with the provinces. We created a platform that's called MEMAC. It's an open round table for dialogue with the communities. Also a system of information about, open information about mining. We think that's very important to talk with reliable information to the community, and that's something that is on our priorities right now.
You're also talking, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just a concept to leave with the audience, which I think is important. As we talk about sustainability, I was looking at the question. Green copper. I think that's something that we've talked about, and I think it's something which it's becoming now a reality. It's possible, not only because copper will help the energy transition, because we can produce copper in a way that is distinctively green. And that's got to do with renewable energy, which in the case of Chile, I mean, we're blessed with having a lot of solar energy and with seawater and other features. But I think that's the aim that we should pursue as an industry, that we're able to get green metals like copper, green copper, to be able to power the energy transition. So it's beneficial from both sides.
Robert, some of the technologies that you're excited about, especially when it comes to green technologies.
Well, you know, there's no free lunch. If you have a windmill in North America, there are birds flying into windmills, and when you put up a desalination plant, you're making the ocean saltier. But there isn't going to be a new world without copper metal.
Yeah.
And it has to be mined if you want to get rid of urban air pollution, which is probably the #1 source of poor health globally. And if we're going to realize the kind of better world we need for our children, we just need a huge amount more mining. So I was looking at that poll. You actually need all 4 of those things. You need to protect the environment, but you also need to attract investors. And it's very important to have a better relationship with local communities around mining. Otherwise, they say, wow, you're mining my granddad's patrimony or my grandma's patrimony. You're taking it away to another country. So the whole womb to tomb, cradle to grave system, you could even say sperm to germ. It has to be studied globally, right? It has to be rethought completely. And it will happen. It is in the process of being reinvented. The companies that get it right will inherit the industry, and the companies that won't will die.
What about the countries that do it right, and it becomes a geopolitic of critical minerals?
The United States is very hungry for mining now. They're realizing that the critical materials the United States needs, not only for the greening of the country, but for the military, don't exist in the United States. So now we have this concept of friendshoring, where the United States will buy minerals from Australia or Canada, maybe consider Chile or Argentina a friend. But now that we are balkanizing the world economy, now that we have the Koreans worried about where they're going to get their metals, the Japanese are worried about where they're going to get their metals, the Chinese are worried about where they get their metals, India is worried, the Europeans for their electric cars, the Americans, it's much more challenging. You can see all the global inflation we have as the integrated world economy is slowly breaking down. Financial markets are worried about this, and in the middle of all this chaos, it's the miners that have to find these metals to give you a new, clean, green economy. And so you can see in that poll, people are very worried about the environment, but paradoxically, you won't have a better environment without these metals.
Right.
So that's such an interesting subject for everybody to understand. You either grow it or you mine it, everything you're touching.
Secretary Ávila, question from our audience. Can the Secretary of Mines comment on the idea that's being touted regarding the creation of a lithium cartel? And I think this is one issue that we've been talking about last night on Bloomberg television as well. Is there going to be a Chile, Bolivia, Argentina lithium cartel, for example, such as OPEC?
I think there's something that's very important to point out is, I think the 3 countries of the region have different perspectives on how to produce the lithium, but we have this shared view about what we want to do next with it. So I think there's a very intensive policy from the region to develop further up in the chain, in the value chain. And I think for that we should work together, and we're working together. We have been working in developing new technologies and new capacities and techniques to go further in that value, in that chain of value. I think that's work that we should do together. I was mentioning you yesterday that Argentina has a round table for mining with the 3 provinces that have lithium. They join forces to create the lithium region in Argentina, and that's a very important approach, because with those joint forces you can go further and you can work on infrastructure and on developing techniques, on research and development. I think that's a very good way to work. And that's something that we want to replicate in Latin America with the other countries. So I think it's a very good and promising future ahead.
Iván, you've also mentioned the linkage and the need to work together also with the end product manufacturers as well.
Yeah, I think that's something that it's an interesting development in the mining industry, especially for metals that are needed for energy transition. We never used to have a very direct link with the manufacturers of end products, and there's an increasing interest in trying to establish that linkage, which I think it's great news, because it just brings the whole value chain together. And it also is reflective of the need that end users are placing on, again, a value chain that's got proper stewardship of environmental and social issues, which I think it's a responsibility of everyone. So I really think that's a good trend, and I think it will bring new uses for copper and also ensure that copper is produced in a responsible way.
I was recently speaking to Nissan, and they were talking about perhaps in the future investing in mines for some of the resources that they need. Is Antofagasta in any of those conversations?
Look, I think as miner, I mean, all of these discussions, I think, open opportunities for us to get closer to our end users and clients. But I think we are miners, and that's what we know, to do, from discovery to production to marketing our products, and that's our interest and our core. But this opens just conversations to be able to meet the demands of our clients in a much more direct way, which is welcome.
Robert, how do you see these economies, whether in Latin America or Africa, really climbing up the value chain through mining?
I want to just repeat the point that we're in constant touch with the automakers. For example, the automakers want to have electric cars, so they call the big battery manufacturers, CATL in Korea, LG and SK Corporation, Panasonic, and they want to order 10 trillion batteries from 2024 on. And the battery manufacturers say, sure guys, we'd be happy to make the batteries, and then they call us looking for the metals. So we're getting very integrated now. We're realizing that you're just not going to make a gazillion electric cars without these metals. In America, we have 280 million automobiles. Only 1 million are electric. We have 279 million to go. And the lithium prices are already up 5-fold. The metals prices are rising. So it's fundamentally important to remember that the automakers are terrified because they thought they could just dial up these metals. But as Ivan told you, it can take 10 or 15 years to bring a significant mine into production. And so governments have to be very careful about this terrible idea of creating a cartel. These metals are all over the world, and it's really an emergency now. If you really want to have a new economy, we're going to have to rapidly work together to actually develop these mines. It's not just a question of trying to create a little mini OPEC. The Saudis, for example, have a lot of experience in oil and gas, the biggest producer in the world. They also want to develop a mining industry. They have an enormous mineral endowment in Saudi Arabia. And of course, they have lithium in Saudi Arabia. So there's competition. And so you got to be very careful here in Latin America. The old mentality, if you're not very careful, the money will go somewhere else. There's lithium all over the planet.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Robert. I think that we know from Argentina that we need these minerals right now, and we have to create the environment for that to happen. And I think it's very important not to change the rules. It's something that the companies need to know that there are some set of rules that won't be changed. And that's something that we want to create. A good environment means not changing some rules. So that's something that's very important from the governments to understand, because there are many risks in mining investment, not also driven by the government situation, but also by prices. So we have to give a good environment for that to happen, and that's why Argentina is trying to have a clear strategy and clear policies in the future.
Ivan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just on that point, I'm absolutely in agreement with the fact that you need to let competition and markets operate in the sort of in these products. There can be a lot of cooperation in terms of sharing best practices and public policies that work here or there, but in the end you need to get the markets to operate on these metals. Otherwise the shortage would just be greater, and it's also part of a fairer framework with clients and end users. So I think that point is absolutely well made by Robert. I think it's very key.
We really thought that Chile was one of the safest places to invest, but now with the new government and the rewriting of the constitution, even with the mining rights, we avoided the most catastrophic scenario for the industry, but at the same time, people are complaining that there isn't a lot of clarity when it comes to legal certainties for those investments to go in. What can the private sector do in that environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think for mining, long-term public policy certainty on the regulatory framework is fundamental. Decisions on public policy made on accurate information, long-term perspective are key. Now, obviously, Chile is going through a change in which it's rewriting its constitution. It's still work in progress, and I think closing that period is important for the purpose of establishing the certainty required for long-term investments. So, that is basically what will needs to happen. To close that process, which is got its own schedule and calendar, and it's still unfolding as the new constitution proposal gets written.
In this environment, we're getting this poll question. How do you work, Iván, with foreign investors for your mine expansions? Are these silent investors, or are they active in your decision-making process?
We have a tradition of having joint ventures in our mines, even though we are operators, so we have majority stakes. And so we work side along them, and I think it's been a very productive and constructive sort of partnership. So from that point of view, we continue to work on our expansions, with the same criteria. Both at Centinela, as I've mentioned, where we've got possibly a big investment coming soon, and in the case of Pelambres, where we're looking, midterm at also being able to grow. So it's a model that's worked well, good, partnerships, and we are very proud of those relationships, and we will continue to work on that basis.
When you talk to these companies, what are you looking for, Robert?
Well, we're looking to be able to sustainably produce metal at the bottom of the world cost curve. We're looking for mines that have a 100-year mine life, if not then 50. We're looking to be at the bottom of the world cost curve, and yet to be able to work very closely with surrounding communities and create stability. When you're talking about foreign investors, money is a coward. It flees at the first sign of trouble. If you want to attract foreign investment, you'll quickly learn you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. We've discussed that with our African friends, and they've quickly learned that they've created a much more stable and attractive environment for foreign investment. And I just want to keep reminding my friends from Chile and Argentina that this is a global world today. And we need a huge amount of integrated mining development. And so we need this sort of dialogue. We need this sort of understanding. But remember that you need stability for mining, because we're investing to build a mine it might not start up until 10 years from now. We have no idea what the copper price will be in 10 years. Only God knows, and she might change her mind. So we need stability. We need rational thought about this very, very important enterprise if we're going to have any hope of a new economy. Without these metals, it's going to be the old economy. In fact, the old economy is wreaking its revenge right now. Oil is $105, $110 a barrel. Wow, coal price is skyrocketing. So you want to get those prices down, you need a rational alternative, and we need more of this kind of dialogue. And we need a lot more understanding that while there's a history of improper environmental practice in mining, the mining industry has made huge strides at finding a new way to do this. And by the way, Dan Jurgen, who wrote the prize, which was the definitive book on the history of the oil industry, is coming out with a new book about copper, and copper as the new oil. So you really should think of copper as the new oil. You want to clean the air, you want to reduce carbon dioxide, you want to stop this process of very important global warming. And You're seeing it in your glaciers. You're seeing it in your drying lakes. We're seeing this globally. This is the revenge of the copper miners. You need to pay attention to what they're saying, and you need to really have a lot more of this dialogue, or there will not be a new economy. It'll just be the old economy.
We were hearing from Rob McEwen earlier this week, and of course he has his project in Los Azules, I believe, in Argentina, and he was saying that some of the government promises are not actually being met, and that countries really do need to take advantage of that short window of opportunity that Robert is talking about. What would you say to that?
Yeah, of course. We know that it's a short window of opportunity right now with this, and the world is looking at Argentina because we have the minerals that they need in the shift towards clean energy. So what we're trying to do is talk with the different companies and understand their needs and try to help to get there. We know that Argentina had some problems in the past, and we want to change that. We want to be more stable. We want to have clear rules and long-term policies that will be respected. And that's something that we're talking a lot with different companies. In fact, there's an opportunity to sign agreements with the companies as Chile does. I think that's a very important thing for the companies to have, and we're very willing to do that. I think that from the government, I think in the past there has never been such a supportive federal government to the mining industry, and that has been shown in different types of action that we have taken in the last 2 years. So we want to create that atmosphere of trust with the companies, and I think that we're achieving that, and that's why we're seeing so much investment announcements in the last couple of years.
On that note, and a little bit more positive outlook towards the mining industry, thank you so much for this conversation today. Secretary Ávila, Iván, Robert, it was really good to have you today.
Thank you.